My aunt stood up in that courtroom, pointed her finger at me, and screamed that I was a liar. That every document I had was fake. That I forged my own grandfather's signature just to steal what was rightfully hers. The judge looked at me. The room went silent. And then I slid a sealed envelope across the table. What was inside didn't just prove she was wrong. It destroyed her. My name is Claire. I'm 28 years old. And up until 6 months ago, I thought my family was normal. Dysfunctional, sure. But normal. My grandfather, Thomas Brennan, raised me. My parents died in a car accident when I was 4. My dad was his only son. So when they were gone, Grandpa Thomas stepped in without hesitation. He became my father, my protector, my entire world. We lived in a small house in Asheville, North Carolina. It wasn't much, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a backyard where we planted tomatoes every spring. He taught me how to fish in the French Broad River, how to fix a leaky faucet with nothing but duct tape and determination, how to stand up for myself even when my voice shook. He worked as a contractor his whole life. Saved every penny. Lived modestly. Drove the same Ford pickup for 20 years. But he was smart with his money. By the time I was in college, he owned that house outright, had a decent retirement account, and a small commercial property he rented out in downtown Asheville. Nothing extravagant. Just a 2-story building with a coffee shop on the ground floor and an office space upstairs. But it was stable. Secure. It was his legacy. He also had a daughter. My aunt, Margaret. Margaret was 10 years younger than my dad. She moved to Florida in her 20s, got married to a real estate developer named Rick, had 2 kids, and only came back to North Carolina maybe once a year. Christmas, if we were lucky. She never called. Never checked in. Never asked how Grandpa Thomas was doing. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 12. She didn't show up. Didn't even call. Grandpa Thomas set a place for her anyway. We sat at the table, just the 2 of us, staring at that empty chair. He didn't say anything, but I saw the sadness in his eyes. But the moment he got sick, she came running. It started 2 years ago. Grandpa Thomas was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. It was slow at first. He'd forget where he put his keys. Repeat a story he'd just told me 5 minutes earlier. Mix up names. But he was still himself. Still sharp in most ways. He could still beat me at chess. Still told the same terrible dad jokes. I moved back home to take care of him. I was working as a graphic designer, and I managed to find a remote position so I could be there full-time. I cooked his meals. Drove him to doctor's appointments. Made sure he took his medication. We had a routine. Breakfast at 7. A walk around the neighborhood at 9. Lunch at noon. Old Western movies in the afternoon. It was hard, but it was manageable. And honestly, I didn't mind. He'd spent his whole life taking care of me. It was my turn. Then Margaret showed up. She called me one day out of the blue and said she was worried about Dad. Said she wanted to come visit and help out. I thought it was nice. I thought maybe she finally cared. Maybe she'd realized what she'd been missing all these years. I was so stupid. She flew in from Tampa and stayed in the guest room. And from the moment she walked through that door, something felt off. She wasn't warm. Wasn't affectionate. She hugged Grandpa Thomas, but it felt mechanical. Like she was going through the motions. She stayed for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, she was glued to him. Constantly in his ear. Asking him about finances. About the house. About the rental property. About his retirement accounts. She'd sit with him at the kitchen table with a notepad, going over bills, bank statements, old tax documents. I'd walk into the room and she'd quickly flip the notepad closed. Smile at me like nothing was happening. I asked her what she was doing. She smiled and said, "Just making sure everything's in order, sweetheart. You wouldn't understand this stuff. It's complicated. Adult things." I'm 28 years old. I've been managing his finances for 2 years. But she talked to me like I was a child. I should have kicked her out right there. But I didn't. Because part of me wanted to believe she actually cared. That maybe, after all these years, she was finally stepping up. Then, 3 months later, Grandpa Thomas had a fall. He tripped on the rug in the hallway and broke his hip. The recovery was brutal. He had surgery, spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and then another month in physical therapy. His dementia got worse. The doctors said it was common after a traumatic injury like that. The stress, the medications, the disruption to his routine, it all accelerated the decline. He started forgetting my name sometimes. He'd look at me across the dinner table and call me by my dad's name. Daniel, he'd say, "When did you get so tall?" It broke my heart every single time. And that's when Margaret made her move. One afternoon, I came home from the pharmacy with Grandpa Thomas's prescriptions and found Margaret sitting in the living room with a lawyer. Not Richard Calloway, our family lawyer. A stranger. A man in an expensive suit with a leather briefcase and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I stopped in the doorway. "What's going on?" Margaret looked at me with this cold, distant smile and said, "We're just updating Dad's estate plan. Don't worry about it." I looked at Grandpa Thomas. He was sitting in his recliner, staring out the window at the bird feeder. He looked confused. Tired. His hands were shaking. I said, "Grandpa, do you know what's happening right now?" He blinked at me. Took a moment to focus. Margaret said it's important. The lawyer handed him a pen. Margaret guided his hand to the signature line. I felt my stomach drop. I walked over and put my hand on the paper. "Stop. He doesn't understand what he's signing." Margaret snapped at me. Her voice was sharp, cold. "He's perfectly capable of making his own decisions, Claire. You're not his keeper. You're not his lawyer. You're just his granddaughter. And you're just his daughter who hasn't been here for 20 years, I shot back. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if you could please step aside. This is a legal matter between Mr. Brennan and his daughter." I said, "He has dementia. He's not mentally competent to sign legal documents." Margaret stood up, her face red. "How dare you? How dare you try to control him like this? You've been isolating him, keeping him from his family. I'm his daughter. I have every right to be involved in his care." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her out. But I knew if I made a scene, she'd use it against me. She'd say I was unstable, that I was trying to manipulate him. So I pulled out my phone and started recording. For the record, I said, "My grandfather has been diagnosed with moderate dementia. He is not in a mental state to sign legal documents. And I'm documenting this." The lawyer looked uncomfortable. Margaret's jaw clenched. "Turn that off," she hissed. "No." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed the papers, shoved them in her bag, and motioned for the lawyer to leave. "We'll finish this another time," she said. But they didn't leave. Not really. The next morning, I found out they'd gone to a coffee shop downtown and finished the signing there. Away from me. Away from anyone who could stop them. I called Richard Calloway the second I found out. Richard Calloway had been Grandpa Thomas's lawyer for 30 years. He was in his 60s, soft-spoken, with silver hair and reading glasses he wore on a chain. He'd helped Grandpa Thomas set up his will, his trust, everything. I sat in his office and told him everything. About Margaret. About the lawyer. About the documents. He listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Claire," he said slowly, "this is bad." He explained that Margaret had likely gotten Grandpa Thomas to sign a power of attorney. That once she had that, she could make financial decisions on his behalf. She could change beneficiaries, transfer property, drain accounts. "Can we fight it?" I asked. He nodded. "We can. But it's going to be ugly. And we'll need proof that he wasn't mentally competent when he signed." I had the recording. The photos I'd taken of the documents on the table. But Richard said we needed more. Medical records. Doctors' statements. Anything that proved Grandpa Thomas wasn't capable of making major decisions. So I started digging. I went to his doctor, Dr. Patel. I explained the situation. She pulled his medical records and gave me a letter stating that, in her professional opinion, Thomas Brennan should not be making major financial or legal decisions without a trusted advocate present. That his dementia had progressed to the point where he could be easily confused or manipulated. I went through every drawer, every file cabinet, every box in that house. I found old medical records, notes from previous appointments, test results showing cognitive decline. And then I found the emails. They were on Grandpa Thomas's old desktop computer. He barely used it anymore, but I knew his password. I went through his inbox and found a chain between Margaret and her husband, Rick. One email, dated just a week after her first visit, said, "Dad's worse than I thought. But that means we can move faster. The property alone is worth at least $400,000. If we can get him to sign everything over before Claire catches on, we're set." Another one, from Rick to Margaret, "Make sure the lawyer knows what to say. Keep it simple. Don't let Claire interfere. Once it's done, it's done." I printed everything. I saved everything to a flash drive. I also found text messages on Margaret's phone. She'd left it on the counter one day while she was in the bathroom. I know it was wrong, but I didn't care anymore. One message to her lawyer said, "Just tell him it's routine. He won't question it. Claire's not smart enough to fight this." I took photos of everything. And then I found the envelope. It was in Grandpa Thomas's safe. A small fireproof lockbox he kept in his closet. He told me the combination years ago, just in case. Inside were important documents. His birth certificate. His marriage license. My parents' death certificates. And a sealed envelope with my name on it. I sat on the floor of his closet, holding that envelope in my hands. My heart was pounding. I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. 3 pages, front and back, in Grandpa Thomas's neat, slanted handwriting. Dated 2 years ago, right after his diagnosis. Before Margaret ever came back into the picture. It was addressed to me. The letter said, "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I'm not myself anymore. And it means someone might be trying to take advantage of that. I want you to know that I've always intended for everything I have to go to you. The house, the property, the accounts, all of it. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who cared. You're the one who made me laugh when I didn't think I could anymore." Margaret has always been about money. Even when she was young. She used to steal from my wallet when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd ask for money and then lie about why she needed it. I've tried to forgive her for that. I've tried to believe she could change. But I don't trust her. I know she'll come back when I'm vulnerable. I know she'll try to take what isn't hers. That's why I'm writing this. I've attached a copy of my original will, signed and notarized, and a letter from Dr. Patel confirming that I am of sound mind as of this writing. If anyone tries to change anything after my mind goes, I want you to fight it. Don't let them bully you, Claire. Don't let them tell you you're wrong. You're not. You're the strongest person I know. You're my legacy. Not the money. Not the property. You. I love you. Grandpa Thomas. I sat on that floor and cried for an hour. I clutched that letter to my chest and sobbed. He knew. He knew this would happen. And he prepared for it. I made copies of everything. The letter. The will. The medical letter from Dr. Patel. I put the originals in a sealed envelope, went to the bank, and locked them in a safety deposit box. I had the bank clerk date stamp the deposit slip. And then I called Richard. "We're taking her to court," I said. Margaret didn't expect me to fight back. She thought I'd roll over. That I'd be too scared or too overwhelmed to challenge her. She was wrong. We filed a petition to invalidate the power of attorney, the quitclaim deed, and the life insurance beneficiary change. We argued undue influence, lack of mental capacity, and elder abuse. Margaret hired a shark of a lawyer. Someone who specialized in estate disputes. Someone who didn't care about the truth, only about winning. His name was Donald Krieger. He had a reputation for being ruthless. The case dragged on for months. Depositions. Motions. Paperwork. Discovery. It was exhausting. I had to relive every painful moment. Every argument with Margaret. Every time I saw Grandpa Thomas confused and scared. Margaret's deposition was infuriating. She sat there, calm and collected, and lied through her teeth. Said she'd been involved in Grandpa Thomas's care for years. That I was the one who kept her away. That I had manipulated him against her. Her lawyer painted me as a gold digger. Said I moved back home to isolate him. To control him. To make sure I got everything. It was disgusting. Grandpa Thomas passed away 3 months into the legal battle. It was a Sunday morning in early spring. I was sitting with him, reading to him from one of his favorite Louis L'Amour novels. He squeezed my hand, looked at me with clear eyes for the first time in weeks, and said, "You're going to be okay, Claire." And then he closed his eyes and went to sleep. He never woke up. I was with him. Margaret wasn't. At the funeral, she didn't cry. She didn't speak to me. She just stood there, arms crossed, in a black dress and oversized sunglasses, like she was waiting for it to be over so she could get back to business. After the service, her lawyer approached me in the parking lot and said, "You should drop this. You're going to lose, and it's going to cost you everything. Legal fees, time, your reputation. Walk away now and maybe we can work something out." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "See you in court." The hearing was set for a cold morning in November. I wore the same navy dress I'd worn to Grandpa Thomas's funeral. I wanted him there with me, even if it was just in spirit. The courtroom was small. Just the judge, the lawyers, Margaret, me, and a court reporter. The judge was an older woman, Judge Patricia Hollis, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Margaret's lawyer went first. He stood up, confident and polished, and painted me as a manipulative granddaughter who was angry she didn't get everything. He said I had no real evidence of undue influence. That Grandpa Thomas was perfectly capable of making his own decisions when he signed those documents. He said the documents were signed in front of a licensed attorney and were completely legal. That Margaret had every right to be involved in her father's care. That I had kept her away for years out of spite and jealousy. "Your Honor," he said, "this is a case of a young woman who saw her inheritance slipping away and decided to fight dirty. She's using her grandfather's illness as a weapon. It's shameful." Then it was our turn. Richard presented the medical records. The doctor's notes. Dr. Patel's letter. The timeline showing how quickly Margaret swooped in after the diagnosis. He showed the emails. The text messages. The recordings. "Your Honor," Richard said, "this is textbook elder abuse. Margaret Brennan manipulated her father when he was at his most vulnerable. She coached him. She isolated him from his primary caregiver. She brought in a lawyer he'd never met and had him sign documents he didn't understand. Margaret's lawyer objected to everything. Said the emails were taken out of context. Said the medical records were outdated. Said the recordings were inadmissible because I hadn't gotten consent. The judge overruled most of his objections. But I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. Not yet. Then Margaret took the stand. She sat there, poised and calm, in a cream-colored blouse and pearls. She looked like the perfect daughter. Concerned. Caring. And she lied. She said she'd been in constant contact with Grandpa Thomas. That I had screened his calls. That I had kept her away because I wanted to control him. She said the documents were legitimate. That he knew exactly what he was signing. That he'd asked her to help him because he didn't trust me. "Your Honor," she said, tears welling up in her eyes, "I loved my father. I just wanted to make sure he was taken care of. And now Claire is trying to paint me as some kind of monster." The judge handed her a tissue. I felt sick. Then Krieger, her lawyer, said, "Your Honor, I believe Claire Brennan forged those medical documents. I think she fabricated that letter from Dr. Patel. I think she's been manipulating this entire case to steal my client's rightful inheritance." The courtroom went silent. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Brennan," she said, "do you have any response to that accusation?" I stood up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the sealed envelope. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to submit this into evidence." The judge raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "It's a letter," I said, "written by my grandfather 2 years ago, before his dementia progressed, before my aunt ever came back into his life. It's been sealed and stored in a safety deposit box since his death. The bank can verify the date it was deposited." Margaret's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. This is ambush evidence. We haven't had a chance to review it. This is highly irregular." The judge held up a hand. "I'll allow it. Let's see what we have." I handed the envelope to the bailiff. He brought it to the judge. The judge opened it carefully. She pulled out the letter. The will. The medical certification from Dr. Patel. She read in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up at Margaret. "Ms. Margaret Brennan," she said slowly, "did you know about this letter?" Margaret's face went white. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I don't know what that is. I've never seen it." The judge adjusted her glasses and read aloud. "I want you to know that I've always intended for everything I have to go to Claire. Margaret has always been about money. I don't trust her." The room was dead silent. The judge continued. "This letter is notarized. It's signed by a licensed physician confirming your father's mental competency at the time of writing. And it directly contradicts everything you've claimed in this courtroom." She held up the will. "This is Mr. Brennan's original will, dated 15 years ago, naming Claire as the sole beneficiary. It was never revoked. It was never amended by him voluntarily." Margaret's lawyer tried to speak. "Your Honor, we'd need to verify the authenticity." The judge cut him off. "The bank deposit records verify the date. The notary stamp is legitimate. The signature matches. I've seen enough." She looked directly at Margaret. "I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of cases. But this is one of the most blatant examples of elder exploitation I've ever encountered." Margaret stood up, her voice shaking. "This is insane. She's lying. She forged that letter. The judge slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Ms. Brennan." Margaret sat. The judge took a breath and delivered her ruling. "The power of attorney is invalidated. The quitclaim deed transferring ownership of the rental property is reversed. The life insurance beneficiary change is voided. All assets will be distributed according to Mr. Thomas Brennan's original will, as stated in this document." She paused. "And Ms. Margaret Brennan, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential fraud investigation. You may face criminal charges for elder abuse, fraud, and undue influence." Margaret's face went from white to red. She started to speak, but her lawyer grabbed her arm. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Claire Brennan, I'm sorry for your loss. Your grandfather clearly loved you very much. This court finds in your favor." She banged the gavel one more time. "We're done here." Margaret didn't say a word to me as we left the courtroom. She just stormed out, her lawyer trailing behind her, already on the phone trying to do damage control. Richard put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Claire." I nodded. But I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Empty. Outside the courthouse, I sat on a bench and just breathed. I looked up at the sky. It was a clear, cold day. The kind Grandpa Thomas loved. A month later, the district attorney's office officially charged Margaret with fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the texts, the recordings, the timeline, everything. She was convicted and sentenced to 3 years probation, ordered to pay restitution for the legal fees and damages, and banned from ever serving as a power of attorney or executor again. Her husband, Rick, divorced her 6 months later. Apparently, he didn't want to be tied to someone with a criminal record. He took the kids and moved to Georgia. Margaret moved to a small apartment in Tampa. I heard she works in a call center now. We haven't spoken since the trial. I sold the rental property. It sold for $425,000. I used the money to pay off Grandpa Thomas's remaining medical bills, cover the legal fees, and set up a trust in his name. The Thomas Brennan Elder Advocacy Fund. It's dedicated to helping families dealing with elder exploitation and abuse. We've already helped 12 families in the Asheville area. I kept the house. Our house. And I still live there. I repainted the living room. Fixed the porch. Planted new tomatoes in the backyard, just like we used to. Some nights, I sit in his chair by the window and read his letter again. I keep it in a frame on the mantel now, next to his photo. You're stronger than you know, Claire. Don't let them bully you. He was right. I also started volunteering at a local senior center. I help families navigate legal and medical systems when their loved ones are diagnosed with dementia. I teach workshops on how to protect yourself from elder abuse. I share my story. And every time I do, I think of Grandpa Thomas. He gave me more than a house or money. He gave me strength. He gave me purpose. And that's something no one can ever take away. If you've ever been betrayed by family, if you've ever had to fight for what's right when everyone told you to give up, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you know someone dealing with a situation like this, please share this video. It might help them. And if this story touched you in any way, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll be sharing more real-life stories like this. Stories about justice. About standing up. About not backing down. Thanks for watching. And remember, you're stronger than you know.